What's up, racing fans? You're watching the NASCAR Nitro Racing League on the HSL Diecast channel. We're here at Daytona International Speedway today for our season opener, the Daytona 500. Qualifying was fun, but now it's time to get to the real racing action. Our first segment, our pole sitter is Johnny Benson. Next to him is Kaz Gralla. That's Richard Petty and Jeremy Mayfield in the back row. The way this race works is each segment's going to have 5 laps. The leader of the 5th lap is going to be your segment winner. Then there is a seconds race, thirds race, 4th race, and the main event. Main event is 5 laps as well. The other races are all 2, and it looks like Kaz Gralla's day is over already. He's not going to have a good points day today. That's an El Reco for him. He is on his roof and out of the race. All right, now it is time for lap 2. Johnny Benson holds the lead, held off Jeremy Mayfield there and Richard Petty, 2 cars with solid tires. Johnny Benson on the rubber tires, and the gates dropped. Jeremy Mayfield taking the lead. Looks like he has a car length lead heading into the turn. Jeremy Mayfield's building his lead, and he crosses the line and second lap in first. He will be leading the field down for lap 3. That was some pretty clean racing in this segment. Now it's time for lap 3. Waiting for the gate to drop, and looks like Jeremy Mayfield's going to come out to a big lead. Richard Petty drafting behind, easily overtaking Benson heading into the corner, and Jeremy Mayfield is on his roof. That is a DNF. That's an El Reco. He is out of the race. And it looks like Richard Petty just barely got him by the bumper there at the very end. And now it's time for lap 4. It'll just be Richard Petty and Johnny Benson. Now just 2 drivers left in this segment here with 2 laps to go. Richard Petty in first, Johnny Benson in second. And with the inside lane, Richard Petty, as long as he doesn't do anything to jeopardize himself, he's got a pretty smooth path to the main event. And lap 4 is down. Richard Petty ends up on his roof, but that is after the finish line. So he'll go to the pits, buff out that damage, and get back to the caution line in first place. Now lap 5 is starting. Richard Petty gets a little bit of a jump up front. He has a full car length lead over Benson heading into the corner. Benson makes a comeback there. With the lower line, Richard Petty's able to recover from that and force his way to the finish line. Richard Petty is in the main event now. For segment 2, we have Martin Truex Jr. and Jimmy on the front row. Don't know which Jimmy that is. Jimmy Means, Jimmy Spencer, maybe Jimmy Butler from the Miami Heat. And behind them we have E. Marshall and Michael Waltrip. Not sure what that E stands for either. Could be Eric. Yeah, let's call him Eric today. And Jimmy takes that lap easily. Followed by Truex, Waltrip, and Marshall. Michael Waltrip lands on his roof, but it's after the finish line. It's not going to affect him in the running order. Jimmy and Martin Truex, the lanes basically switch. The front row and the back row are the same, but the lane switch. Oh, and the inner lane gets such a big lead. Michael Waltrip spins out, and he recovers, stays on his wheels, but Truex overtakes him for second place in that lap. E. Marshall's coming up in last again. And now it is time for lap 3. Jimmy's still in the lead, followed by Truex, Waltrip, and Marshall. And looks like the outer lane had a little trouble at the start. Waltrip and Jimmy are drafting down into the turn. Marshall's pushing Truex, and Truex edges out Waltrip for the second spot. Between Michael Waltrip and Martin Truex, those two fighting for second place, it's they're putting on a pretty good show today. Jimmy's, of course, dominant in this segment. And it looks like the same is happening in this lap. Truex might have gotten a little loose there. And this time it was Waltrip that comes out ahead and will be starting on the front row for the final lap. So it's going to be Jimmy, Waltrip, Truex, and Marshall. And that outer lane's having problems again. Truex just blows by Michael Waltrip. Michael Waltrip tries to nudge his way in there, but he does not. Martin Truex goes on to the seconds race, Waltrip to the thirds race, Marshall to the fourth, and of course Jimmy will be going to your main event. Now for segment 3, we have Ryan Blaney, Ross Chastain, Ricky Craven, and D. Driver. I doubt that's Donald Driver from the Green Bay Packers. It could be. Could be someone totally different. Just has his name as D. Driver. And looks like Ross Chastain easily overtakes Ryan Blaney on the first lap. Ross Chastain starting on the front row now. Has an easy path to victory with Ricky Craven's very heavy car pushing him. Craven and Chastain take over first and second. Ryan Blaney third. D. Driver fourth. Now it's time for lap 3. Some pretty clean racing so far in this segment. Looks like Ryan Blaney gets his nose under Ross Chastain's bumper. Ross Chastain's very squirrely right now. Gets passed by Craven, gets passed by Driver, and gets passed by Ryan Blaney. And he does come back to take third at the very last second there. That was a pretty exciting lap. And now the field is fully shaken up. What was the back row is now in the front and vice versa. And the outside row gets a pretty good jump at the start. D. Driver will be leading this segment to the finish line. And it's another clean lap. That was D. Driver, Ricky Craven, Ryan Blaney, and Ross Chastain on that lap. Pretty clean racing there. And now for the final lap of this segment, D. Driver has an easy path to the finale. D. Driver in the same kind of car as Jimmy, who easily won his segment, gets a great start with Ryan Blaney pushing him. Ooh, he gets loose. He gets off the track, and he is on his roof and out of the race. Ricky Craven's going to the finale. What a tough break for D. Driver. It was in his grasp. All he had to do was pull out of the turn, and he chokes it away. How unfortunate is that? Now for the next segment, it is Harrison Burton with Bill Elliott, Alan Kulwicki, and Jeff Gordon. Elliott comes out to a quick lead over Burton, about a car length, and Elliott takes that segment just out of sheer speed. Harrison Burton back to second, Kulwicki up to third, and Gordon back to fourth. And Kulwicki has a pretty heavy car. He should be pushing his old rival from 1992 up to a segment win if this keeps going on. And they easily take over Blaney. The two Ford Thunderbirds easily take over Blaney, and Blaney gets sent to the back row. And this could be a really good segment coming up in the next 3 laps, because these two cars are pretty evenly matched, and it's very close. Elliott and Kulwicki, they are neck and neck heading into the corner. Push from Gordon sends Bill Elliott to the front, and Gordon overtakes Kulwicki at the very last second there to move up into second place. That puts Kulwicki right behind his favorite drafting partner from the early laps. And let's see what happens here. The outer row gets has a little trouble at the start. Kulwicki and Elliott smooth going into the turn and out of the turn. Very clean racing that lap. No positions are really changed except third and second there. And we have Elliott, Kulwicki, Gordon, and Burton. Kulwicki and Elliott neck and neck again. Elliott has the inside lane advantage, and he squeezes Kulwicki to the top of the track, and he will win segment number 3. Now for segment number 4. On the front row is Jeff Fuller and Todd Bodine. In the back is Bubba Wallace and Rusty Wallace. They are not related. Their last names are Wallace, but they are not related. Todd Bodine has one of the fastest cars in the series. He's about to overtake Jeff Fuller on speed from the outside row. That was a really close lap. They were neck and neck. He gets them by a bumper. Todd Bodine takes over first place for lap 2. And there's some trouble with Bubba Wallace at the start. Bubba Wallace, you can see his car flipping in the background. He does not get a clean exit from the start gate. The other 3 cars, pretty smooth towards the finish line. You have Jeff Fuller hanging right on Todd Bodine's bumper to stay in second. And let's take a look to see where Bubba Wallace is. He is on his roof and out of the race. Now for the next lap, we have Todd Bodine. Should have an easy path to the win. Jeff Fuller getting knocked around and knocked off the track by Rusty Wallace there. It's not going to affect the running order at all, as Todd Bodine has just been dominant from the start in this segment. He had a huge lead over Rusty Wallace coming to the finish line there. And now for the next lap, it will be Bodine, Wallace, and Fuller in third. Fuller stays on his wheels and will line up behind Bodine at the start here. Just waiting for the gate to drop. Oh, and Bodine gets loose. Fuller's bumper gets under Bodine and forces him off the track. But Fuller's now loose. Rusty Wallace tries to make a move in the upper part of the turn. Fuller throws a block and crosses the line in first. Todd Bodine reduced to third in this segment. What an exciting lap that was. Fuller gambled and won there. A little bit of a dirty move, but a win is a win. Third place is third place to see Todd Bodine there. He'll be racing in the thirds race. And now it's time for the fourth race. On the inside row is Harrison Burton, and outside is E. Marshall. And Marshall takes a commanding lead from the outside row before he even gets off the split track. Has a 3-car length lead going into turn 1. And E. Marshall leads the first lap. And as long as he doesn't make a mistake here, E. Marshall will move on to the thirds race. And Harrison Burton has more trouble at the start. E. Marshall has a big lead. As long as he doesn't spin out and end up on his roof here, he will go to the thirds race. E. Marshall wins the fourth race over Harrison Burton. And now it is time for the thirds race. In the front row, Ross Chastain and Todd Bodine. Second row, Michael Waltrip and Jeff Gordon. Third row is E. Marshall. And there's a wreck at the start. Ross Chastain and Michael Waltrip are off the track. Michael Waltrip's flipping multiple times. Todd Bodine leads the first lap of the thirds race. And let's take a look at our drivers. That looks like Ross Chastain is on his side. His day is over. He will not be racing in the seconds race. He's not even going to complete the next lap. That is unfortunate for a car that looked really good, really fast in the early parts of the race. And Michael Waltrip is also on his roof. His day is over too. He will not have a chance to compete in the seconds race either. And now for lap 2 of the thirds race, it is Bodine, Marshall, and Jeff Gordon in third. The gates are down, green flag is in the air, and Todd Bodine gets punted again, this time by Jeff Gordon. Taking a book out of the other Jeff's playbook, squeezes Marshall up at the top for the win in the thirds race. He will be going on to the seconds race. There's a lot of heavy hitters in this race. Benson, Truex, Blaney, Kulwicki, these older racing champions in the back row will have a lot of work ahead of them to get a win in 2 laps. Can one of them do it, or will it be the Johnny Benson show? Johnny Benson leads this first lap with ease. It's a little bit of a contest from Ryan Blaney. And it looks like Jeff Gordon's on his roof. His day is over. He will not be racing in the main event. His day ends just outside the top 10. And these are your top 10 finishers, your segment winners, plus the winner of this race. And Johnny Benson gets a push from the 2 cars behind him versus the 1 for Ryan Blaney. Truex takes over Blaney. He's the fastest of the newer castings. And it looks like it'll be Benson moving on to the main event. And now the first lap of the main event looks like Jimmy gets a lead over Jeff Fuller. Elliott's moving on, trying to make a move for second place here. And looks like Jimmy just barely edges out Jeff Fuller for first. Jeff Fuller flips, but it's after the finish line, so he gets to stay in first place for this segment. Somebody's on his roof over there. Looks like it's Johnny Benson. Johnny Benson put in all that work in the seconds race just for his day to end early in the main event. That is unfortunate for him. He'll be credited with 6th. Johnny Benson will be credited with 6th place in this race. Not bad for a car with rubber tires. And Jeff Fuller will take the lead for lap 2 of the main event. And that big heavy car of Ricky Craven pushes Jimmy out to a big lead over everybody else. Fuller making a comeback in the bottom lane. And it will be Fuller, Jimmy, Elliott, Craven, and Petty for lap 2. Now it's time for lap 3 of the main event. The running order hasn't changed much besides Johnny Benson crashing out. He was starting in 6th place anyway. And it looks like the outer row has a good edge. Jimmy takes the lead here from Jeff Fuller on the outside. Gets a big push from Ricky Craven. And Jimmy will lead that lap with Fuller in 2nd. Richard Petty's struggling to cross the finish line there. Something may have happened on his lap. And now it's time for lap 4. Just 2 laps to go, and Jimmy is starting up front alongside Jeff Fuller. But when Jimmy's in this position, he is very hard to pass. Ricky Craven looks to take 2nd from Fuller. Jimmy takes a big lead, and Richard Petty edges out Fuller for 3rd. From 1st to 4th in just the span of 2 laps. What a disappointing end to Jeff Fuller's day. It'll be a really tough battle for him to get from 4th to 1st on the final lap. And it is Jimmy's race to lose now. Jimmy in 1st, followed by Ricky Craven, Richard Petty, Bill Elliott, and Fuller. It looks like the inner row forms a freight train heading into the turn. And it's Jimmy. Jimmy wins the Daytona 500. He beats 2 Hall of Famers, Richard Petty and Bill Elliott. Jimmy is your winner. Jimmy wins the Daytona 500. Richard Petty 2nd, Bill Elliott 3rd. Craven and Fuller fill out your top 5. Here is a screenshot of the drivers on the podium and your final race results. Remember to leave a comment, hit that like button, and subscribe. And these are your point standings after 1 of 12 races. This is HSL Diecast checking out. See you next time at Bristol.